very much for joining us, Tony.
Thank you, Dan.
Now, as it will be saying across the bottom of the screen at the moment, you are an alternative trading systems pioneer, which is possibly the most adventurous title that I've heard for an interview so far in this entire show. Perhaps we could divulge a bit more about what that's about.
Well, effectively, I've been building and working with alternative trading systems for 15, 17 years now. And that's almost the entire time they've been in existence. I started with a company called Instinet in America. My first day there was the day Netscape listed. And I walked into the trading floor and everything was just going crazy because the volume of orders was so big that our systems crashed. And what I learned from that was that the people that called up for help were actually the market makers, because they were saying without the internet trading system, they didn't know how to make a market in Netscape before it started formal trading.
Wow. So what are you doing now then? I hear you're working on an entirely new type of platform?
Well, over the years I've worked on crossing networks, and as you know, we set up Chi-X. And I think Chi-X solved the relationship for the brokers and exchanges. There was always a lot of, going back 5, 6 years ago, the brokers were very unhappy that the exchanges had become for profit and were charging them a lot of money to trade on a utility. So Chi-X came along, 90% cheaper, 10 times faster technology, and showed that the liquidity could move pretty quickly. What Chi-X didn't do was actually make it better for the institutional traders, the long-term investors, to trade in the market. Because effectively what's happened is the alternative trading systems, the broker crossing networks, and the exchanges themselves have become cheaper, faster, but dumber. They've lost a lot of the functionality of old style trading.
That's a really interesting point, because people, of course, are talking in the world of high frequency that in fact they're making many more decisions much more quickly, and in theory, I mean, there are even things called smart order routers.
Absolutely.
So how is it dumber?
Well, effectively, and this ties into the politicians and regulators and everybody, they're all saying that the market should focus on all liquidity going through, if they could have it that way, one visible central limit order book. Well, that's balmy, trying to say all trades all the time should just go through one little pipe. Because clearly in the past there's been times when you have an auction, pre-market is an auction, closing market is an auction. They're actually very successful. Why not have auctions during the day, particularly for the less liquid stocks? Why not resolve the issue of whether high frequency and proprietary traders are market makers by bringing back the old quote system as well?
Now, isn't this just a sign, just because as politicians who don't really understand what the markets are and how they work fully, that they just don't want to be left in the dark? And this whole idea of a consolidated tape for Europe, surely this is going to solve more of those issues than having to put everything through a single channel.
Well, MiFID, I think, made a mistake not having a consolidated tape from the very beginning. But a consolidated tape is part of a solution, it's not the total solution. I think what you should be doing is giving people more choice in how they trade. And the second thing that I want to try and achieve is come up with a solution that will work in America, a solution that will work in Europe, and a solution that will work in Asia. Because the long-term investors, the big asset managers, are global. A lot of the stocks now are global. People buy an Apple iPhone, they buy a Samsung notebook, they can buy a Toyota car anywhere, but it's much more difficult for them to buy those shares, say here in London or anywhere else in the world. So the world's becoming a lot more global. What we want to do is say, okay, here's a system where long-term investors can actually interact with each other to find willing buyer, willing seller.
I know one of the discussions, because we were talking about regulations just now in one of the panel sessions, was the fact that MiFID II, people started to think maybe it was just a knee-jerk reaction and not actually thought through as well as it could be so far, certainly in terms of HFT regulation, that it's really reacting to just anecdotes and fear rather than the real case at hand. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, because clearly when we started Chi-X and we had far more HFT on the platform than we did institutional investors. The institutional investors that came on tested the platform, by giving an order to a broker that was connected to Chi-X and giving the same order to a broker that wasn't connected, they got better execution from the broker that was there. And that was how Chi-X actually turned around the whole turquoise position, which was going to be all the big brokers have their own cozy little club. And those brokers actually found their institutional clients calling up and saying, well, actually, Chi-X works. Turquoise doesn't exist yet, or it's not working that well. I want you to channel your flow through there. So the success of Chi-X was actually because it delivered a better result to the professional investor. What you've got now is everybody saying, oh, well, maybe these high-frequency guys are undermining the integrity of the market. Well, what is the integrity of a market? You have a willing buyer, a willing seller. In the days, as I call BC, before computers, they used to have a choice. They would get an order and they'd choose, do I call this broker, this broker, this broker? I think this broker is going to be the best to execute this order. And then he'd say to him, execute it this way. I want you to try and find, you phone all your clients and try and find the other side for me. Or he might call another broker and say, can you provide some capital? Will you do this as a principal bid for me? So there was always choice. And what I was saying before, the regulators are trying to say, no, 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 you can't have choice. It's all got to go through one central limit order book. And that's not the right way for the markets to trade.
Is this possibly because, again, on this knee-jerk reaction thing, it's because we've had this financial crisis, everyone's having this big waggly finger at the bankers, and so they don't want to be associated, so they're creating regulations almost in spite of the financiers rather than in collaboration with. And really what they should be doing is not so much regulating, but more allowing the self-regulation that's happened to continue, but fix the loopholes that have caused the issues and play more of a game of fixing the errors rather than trying to create entirely new regulation instead. Absolutely.
I think a politician or a regulator trying to tell a professional trader how to trade is lunacy. What the regulators and politicians should be on the alert for is to stop market abuse. You know, there are traders out there that abuse the markets, people that trade on inside information, people that will put spoof orders in the market. They're not just high frequency, they can be any type of trader. Retail traders often try to spoof the market. There's boiler brokerages, you know, that call up and dupe people out of all their money. They really need to concentrate on that because that is an important part of the market that does need regulation. But trying to tell a professional trader that is managing billions, if not trillions of dollars, how he should trade every order is lunacy.
Well, thank you very much for taking time. This new platform we're working on, is there anything that people can see yet?
I'll be doing a speech tomorrow at TradeTech where I'll give a few more details on it. And what we're doing now is a bit like what we did when we launched Chi-X. We're talking to the market, we're talking to the buy side, we're talking to the sell side, we're talking to the regulators. We've already got the technology ready for it. We've got the management team, and we're just putting the final touches on it, and then we'll release it publicly.
Well, I look forward to seeing that. I would love to give you more contact details, but of course, that wouldn't really work at the moment. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.